Since I have been able to vote, I have wondered, why are people attracted to certain political presidential figures and not others? Is it their physical appeal, the policies that they implement, or perhaps it's the language that they use? Rhetorical strategies like appealing to pathos can be extremely important when making yourself more likable to an audience. Using words that people can relate to and find meaningful can join people under one group to unite them for a common goal and appeal to their need to the pursuit of happiness. There is a need by political candidates to be understood and accepted by a certain age, religious, or politically affiliated group that makes rhetoric important, giving oneself a sense of political identification. Different candidates throughout history have used different words that appeal to an audience's pathos, like Obama using the word hope in his campaign. But why are there different outcomes for different political candidates? Why is it? I will be focusing particularly on Ron Paul, the GOP candidate for the 2012 primaries. Ron Paul captured the attention of much of American youth, especially in California. In April of 2012, Ron Paul visited Chico State and was invited by a large group of students who supported his campaign.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
We love you, Dr. Paul.
Michael and Ryan, thank you very much for that introduction, and I'm very pleased to see such a nice crowd and such a nice welcome. Thank you. The revolution is alive and well. Somebody asked me why I'm not on your campus today. I said, well, I heard there were a lot of young people here who cared about liberty.
I believe that the youth of America was attracted to Ron Paul because of his relaxed policies, but also an eye for how to rhetorically catch a young voter's attention. It is all about what he said and how he said it. Relaxed policies on marijuana usage and helping students by ridding college of federal loan systems also helped in his political campaign. To quote from his visit in Chico, he talked about the marijuana issue as being a victimless crime because it's a bad habit. He claims that he would like to be the first president to get rid of 40,000 laws, and that he would start with the drug laws that are in existence. Ron Paul appeals to ideals that many young people believe in but don't necessarily understand. Like Obama's Hope campaign, Ron Paul uses the phrase,
"The revolution is alive and well,"
to catch people's attention. He uses words like revolution, freedom, liberty, and rights under what I call freedom rhetoric to appeal to people's patriotic needs. But why is it that these phrases that Ron Paul uses are so important? What is the phenomenon of freedom rhetoric, and what does freedom mean to different people? In an article by Patrick Langau, he states, "A common phenomenon of American political rhetoric is the invocation of the Declaration of Independence. However, they usually only quote the preamble. There is a false assumption in that American independence and political freedoms were guaranteed by the document. Different people have different meanings of what freedom means. Some believe that to be free, you are free from, and some believe that freedom means to have the freedom to. To be free from, some people believe that we are free from government interference, involvement, military involvement, and communistic values of selected careers. To have the freedom to, some people believe we have the freedom to speak our own opinion, own land and businesses, practice any religion, and live our lives according to our own beliefs." In another article by Michael Calvin McGee, he writes about ideographs and explains that we are conditioned to believe in certain words that affect us because of their association with ideologies. He quotes, "The end product of the state's insistence on some degree of conformity in behavior and belief, I suggest, is a rhetoric of control, a system of persuasion presumed to be effective on the whole community. This, in turn, gives us the myth of having the right to be free, according to Wade Roof. In his article, he states, unhampered by dictators and state-dominated economics, people were now free to presume their dreams, or so the American myth would have it. Because of our conditioning, we believe that we have the right to pursue our freedom and liberty as we choose." Wade continues on to say, "America's experience of being free and making freedoms possible for others thus was a plan for the entire world. Because of what President Bush called our timeless yearning to be free, voters are more influenced by the word freedom in political speeches. Ron Paul wrote a book about freedom rhetoric and stated, "We have all heard politicians use the words democracy and freedom countless times. They are used interchangeably in modern political discourse, yet their true meanings are very different." He continues on to say, "If we intend to use the word freedom in an honest way, we should have the simple integrity to give its real meaning. Freedom is living without government coercion. So when a politician talks about freedom or liberty, regardless of the issue being discussed, ask yourself whether he is advocating more government force or less. If freedom is living without government coercion, how does this tie into the analysis on what freedom means to people? This involves the freedom from, but does not tie into the freedom to. The word of freedom is still used vaguely, regardless of what definition you give it. I believe that because Ron Paul is aware of the American myth of freedom, he is able to use that emotional appeal to gain college-age supporters who still believe in the American dream. This strategy has been used many times before to sway voters and supporters to a certain side.
And they have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. We cannot walk alone.
The American dream is the belief that Americans have the right to build any life they want from the ground up, and in young people, that belief is still possible, along with dreams of success. So you're probably wondering by now what any of this means, and why it's important that different people have different meanings of freedom. This is important for voters when understanding when a political candidate or speaker is talking about freedom or expressing the need for freedom. A voter can ask themselves, what do they mean by freedom? And is their freedom the same as my freedom? Some examples of freedoms that Ron Paul talks about in his visit to Chico State are: people should be responsible for their own actions and their own money. If you have the right to your life and a right to your liberty, you ought to have a right to keep the fruits of your labor. And he wants to offer students the freedom of choice and the freedom to run their own lives. But what does this really mean? Thinking back on the different meanings of freedom, what are we free from, or what are we free to do? What is it that Ron Paul wants us to feel when he says freedom? For freedom of choice and freedom to run our own lives, what is he really telling us?
Freedom. Freedom of choice. Freedom to run their life as they choose. Get the federal government out of their lives. The revolution is alive and well.